Now, this is something very dear to my heart because it impacted me very, very significantly and really added to my health decline, not once, not twice, but three times. And while it's now becoming more common to talk about mold, what I really feel like the missing piece is a lot of people know to remove themselves from a moldy situation. And so did I, to be fair, when I was first exposed to it in Sydney. However, I had no idea that we actually need to detoxify it out of our bodies and it stays in your body, which I know actually sounds very logical now. It stays in your body unless you do something to detoxify it. Now, also, when people are detoxifying mold, it can feel horrific symptom wise unless you're really supporting your body. Okay, so that's what I really want to talk to is we can get it out of your body. And if we support all your drainage pathways, it's fine. But also, mold really plays havoc with your mental health, your thoughts, your thinking, and your brain fog and brain function as well. So I really want to talk to that. But your body is reacting to something in your environment. Sometimes it's in real time that you recognize that your body's reacting, or in the past, and we've got to detoxify it out of your body because it's adding to your symptoms. For example, brain fog, or adding to low energy or hormonal disruption and imbalances. That's why we need to focus on it, or skin. Mold shows up for a lot of people on their skin. It also showed up for me that way the second time I got exposed to it, definitely not the first time, but let's talk to that. So, first of all, once again, this is for informational purposes. It's not for medical diagnosis. Please talk to your primary healthcare provider. If you need to get tests run or anything, work with your nutritional provider, your primary healthcare provider. And please know I'm not diagnosing anything. I am not telling you that you've had mold exposure. This is so you get educated and empowered and you can help yourself, your family, your friends, your colleagues, and really open up the conversation around mold and mold exposure. Who am I? I'm New Zealand's first certified nutritional therapy practitioner. I have been working with clients one-on-one for over a decade and had the privilege and pleasure of working with tens of thousands of people now through my corporate work that I spent lots of time in different corporations through my one-on-one and my group programs. So I feel very blessed and very privileged. So my story with living with mold, initially it began in Sydney, and I truly had the naive understanding from childhood that you only got exposed to mold if you're in a wet, damp house. Now, that wasn't me. I also didn't go to Otago in New Zealand. My university days, I wasn't in a wet, cold house. I was in a very dry, sunny house. And so during my university days, I also didn't have all the mold nightmares that my friends that went to Otago did, where they were in very damp houses. Now, for some reason, when I moved to Sydney, I never thought that a very hot but humid climate would create mold. I didn't even know unless I'd seen black mold on the walls. That would have been my very limited understanding around what a moldy house looked like. I would have known if it was damp or I could see black mold. And I thought that you'd see black mold in the bathroom, and that was my absolute naive understanding of mold. So I moved into an apartment in Sydney in my banking days, and often on a Friday, I would get to work from home. And I would love working from home because I thought I was managing my stress levels and having really good work-life balance because I'd go to the gym at lunchtime or out with my housemates for lunch we were all in corporate jobs. And I thought it was really great. However, while I was living in this apartment, and I'd lived in Sydney for longer, like I moved into this apartment maybe after 18 months of being in Sydney. On the days that I work from home, I'd get a really bad sniffly nose, I'd get colds, I'd get headaches. I feel really tired. I'd have a lot of brain fog. I would be sneezing a lot. I was kind of reacting to the environment, but I didn't know that often if you're being exposed to mold, you'll also be very sensitive to dust. So I was like totally, totally just reacting. Lots of headaches, lots of fatigue, not sleeping well. And I was always picking up colds. Like I was always getting sick. And I just was thought put it down to having a bad immune system, being tired, worn out, whatever it was. But every time I'd go away for work or away, I'd magically like instantly get better. And then I'd come back and I'd feel sick again. And one holiday, my parents came over at Christmas to be with me, and we went away. We were going away. Anyway, my mum was looking through some clothes or doing something, and also I had noticed this, but once again, out of naivety, I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't know mold could grow on your clothes. Like I just had no understanding of this concept. And so some days I wore a lot of black suits to work, black shirts. I would go to work and like either on the way, maybe when I was getting dressed in the morning, on the way to work, or sometime throughout the day, I would look down and I'd see these white spots on my suits. Kind of, yeah, just like white. And I'd be like, my gosh. And I'd eat a lot of gluten-free things at this time and cakes and stuff. And so I truly thought that maybe the like icing sugar, because it wasn't sugar-free, they were just gluten-free, the icing sugar was falling onto my suits and I was just such a mess. So I would just wipe it all off. I didn't even think anything of it. I just thought that it was kind of messy. Definitely did not think that that was from mold literally on my clothes. So once my mum comes over, she's like, oh my gosh, do you realize that all of your clothes are filled with mold? We then investigate like the cupboard under the stairs, and my suitcase is all covered in mold, like all of these things. So basically, what had happened is I was living in mold, like physically in my room, but also I was wearing moldy clothes to work because I just um dab down my clothes with a wet cloth and just wipe all this flour, icing sugar, whatever I thought it was, off my clothes, and then I continue wearing them. I never did anything more about it because they weren't dirty or anything. I just clean off those patches. But the mold was riddled throughout my wardrobe. And what I didn't realize was my particular apartment was on the ground floor. My room had doors, but there was no sunlight coming in. And what happens in Sydney is a lot of houses are built like on sand, effectively. And so when it would rain and we'd get torrential rain, the water would just stay under the house and then come up through the walls. I'm not explaining this technically properly, but that was how, and how since then I've learned a lot of people in Sydney and other cities are really exposed to mold, but the humidity plus the rain was really a breeding ground for mold. And what was really fascinating is when I went to my doctor, because I had influenza, I had really bad chest infections, I was always getting sick, these headaches, these coughs, droopy nose, colds, fatigue, headaches, like just awful symptoms. For some reason, I don't actually know 100% why. Maybe she thought mold. They tested me with just a normal lab test for dust, and I came up as highly allergic to dust. So I should not be living in this particular house because the dust, which really was just the mold. So often when you've got a huge mold load in your body, you're going to react to dust, like be very reactionary to dust. And so it came up that I was allergic, like very allergic to dust, and I needed to get out and move on like almost straight away, which I did. And what I did when I moved was I threw out like my whole wardrobe, threw out my bed, like all the things. Bought things started again in a new apartment. However, I never knew to do anything for my own personal body. So, as we're talking about loads, and like when I genuinely couldn't understand how I had ended up so sick at the time, like I was shocked when, the medical world wrote me off and told me that I was going to die. I was so unwell, they didn't know what to do with me. I genuinely was like, I don't know how I got this sick and got to this place. But as I studied functional nutrition and looked at all the layers of what had impacted my health to get me to that place, not in a judgment way, but I could understand how I ended up so sick because mold alone was sitting in my body. So that was my first exposure before I knew anything about natural health, alternative health, functional medicine, and functional health. And I really was really quite naive to mold in terms of, other than it showing up kind of in your bathroom or as black on your walls, that's kind of how I thought it presented. And I definitely didn't think that I was being exposed to it. So the main point here is removing yourself from the exposure isn't enough if you want to optimize and have the best health possible. Our liver will not detoxify the mold from our bodies when we've been seriously exposed to it without using herbs. So if it's just like in a hotel and you breathed in a little bit, or you've gone to a friend's house, please do not panic. Our liver is designed to detoxify small amounts. Our livers are designed to detoxify small exposures to a number of different things. But when we're overloaded, which living in a house apartment full of mold, that's an overload. Our liver's never going to be able to do that by itself. Now let's meet Sherilyn, who is one of my amazing clients that did the mold protocol last time. So Sherilyn is an AMD foot detox practitioner. She has her own practice in Palmerston North, so please go to her. And before Sherilyn started working with me in the 10-day programs and as a foot detox practitioner, Sherilyn came to me to one of our health retreat days. And on the health retreat day, we do the foot detox. And in that foot detox, we saw mold in her water, which got her to start thinking. Sherilyn definitely didn't start working with me going, I have definitely got mold. She kind of knew, but hadn't really connected the dots. And that's the thing. With our health journey, sometimes we need to delve into it more, or we need visuals like the foot detox. This is why I love the foot detox, because in 30 minutes, you can learn so much about your body, but it also triggers memories for you to go, yes, I did have mold. So Sherilyn's health, her vitamins and minerals were very depleted, her adrenals, she was exhausted, postpartum mum that works, it could be very easy to put it down to all of those things, brain fog, weight, puffy, inflamed. But we knew she'd been exposed to mold because of the foot detox, which then got her to think about when had her symptoms, when had her health significantly changed. And her health had changed when she was in a rental. Oh, the rentals. She was living in this rental house and was starting to feel fatigued, tired, putting on weight, lack of energy, brain fog. And it wasn't until they were moving out that they moved their headboard so that, where she was sleeping all day and all night. Oh, not all day, sorry. She wasn't sleeping all day, but sleeping all night there and behind the headboard on the wall, huge amounts of mold. So obviously Sherilyn moved on, like they were moving out when they saw it. However, the mold was still in her body. So her first exposure to knowing that the mold was still in her body was doing the AMD iron foot detox. Now, we see the mold specifically in the water. It's this dark green when you've got mold in your body. You don't, even if you've got mold in your body, it won't always show up in your first detox. So don't think that just because it hasn't shown up in your first detox, that you don't have mold. And you can, doing the foot detox while on a mold protocol is phenomenal because it's such a great way, another drainage pathway via your feet to get the mold out of your body as fast as possible and very gently. So we're still going to get exposed to mold. I went to the Cell conference last year. The hotel had a mold exposure. So I do the foot detox to get it out of my body. There's many different ways we get exposed to mold. And so unlike parasites, where you don't always realize or recognize it, mold is always like, I got exposed to it, I detox it out of my body, and then it's gone unless you get re-exposed. Okay, so Sherilyn's done the program, she's done the work to get the mold out of her body. If she ever lived in another house with mold, same thing. We need to take the herbs, do all the support in Sherilyn's case, because she's an AMD ion foot practitioner. The foot detox is going to be a major support to her in her mold journey, which I totally agree with and think is absolutely fantastic. So living with mold exposure is like trying to function in a room with poor quality air. You can't see it clearly, right? Like if I said to you, do you have really poor air quality, which the reason I use this analogy is this is true for mold, you're not necessarily going to notice, you're not necessarily going to say so, but over time you will feel it in your body. You'll feel it with headaches, with fatigue, with the mold fatigue. It's this heavy, foggy feeling that you can't really explain. It's not like your adrenals are just exhausted and you can't get out of bed. It's this real heaviness in your body. It's horrible. So Harvey got exposed to mold last year at the Cell Core conference. So before that, he'd never been exposed to mold. We'd lived in homes that are mold free. And we go to America last year, and obviously the water, while he was drinking filtered water, I'd bought all his water, I made sure his water was really good. Within 24 hours of being at the hotel, Harvey's skin broke out in this awful rash. Now, rashes often show up with mold exposure. My second time, my body was covered in what I call the mold rash. And so I was with Harvey in America thinking, oh my gosh, what the heck am I going to do? What has happened to my son? Is it first of all, I was like, it must be the water in the hotel, like what he was showering in, because we were showering, he was showering after a long flight. And so the thing here about it is whenever what I want you to stop and pause on is when our bodies are showing symptoms, whether it's our children, ourselves, our partners, please don't ignore them because there's always a reason we get these symptoms. And the earlier we get it out, the less disruption to your long-term health and to your health in general. So I was freaking out thinking, oh my gosh, we're here for another week. My son's reacting to the water. What am I going to do? I can't shower him. And then I was like, you know what? Is it really the water? And so I started talking to some of the other doctors at the conference, and they were saying how I watched them and they were sneezing. They had bags under their eyes and they were feeling quite tired. And I was feeling more tired than normal as well. And I was like, it's not the water, it's a mold. He's got a mold rash. And as I was talking to these other doctors, and then I spoke to the hotel, they were actually renovating the hotel at the moment, which meant that all the mold spores were up in the air. And being such a small human, he was probably 14 months at the time. That was going to be such a load on his body, he was going to show it. And when our liver is overwhelmed, we flash things out through our skin. So it made sense that it showed up on his skin. But the beautiful thing was, because he's so young, we can use Cellcore products to help his body. And within another 48 hours, it wasn't showing our skin anymore. And by the time we got home, we'd gotten rid of it all. So the point here is we don't need to live in fear for us and our small humans and our partners and our family members, but we do need to be educated and empowered because then we've always got tools. And this is why I love working with clients in the 12-month health roadmap transformation because they learn tools for now. They learn tools for their body now. In the future, you learn how you get exposed to mold. So even if you're sitting here thinking, I don't have mold, you might get exposed to it in the future. And now you've got tools to learn why, what to do, how you get exposed, how you support your body and the small human. So I think this is really important because you might not be exposed to it now, but it's unlikely that you'll never get exposed to it in the future. You know, I've had it 3 times, not to mention hotels, other ways of getting it, but 3 major times. The first time, I can forgive I didn't know. But the other 2 times, as a health practitioner, I still got exposed to mold. So it's unlikely you're not going to be exposed to it. Now, Athena, she is somebody, she's on my social media grid, so you can go and see her skin. She's clearly let me share her story. But when Athena started DMing me late one night over a year ago, and she's done the mold program, she's done the parasite program a few times because mold and parasites definitely go together. And she's in my 12-month health transformation program. Athena's mold actually showed up in terms of her skin. She got the mold rash. She wasn't DMing me about mold, saying I have been exposed to mold. She was DMing me about wanting to join the parasite program and then saying to me, will you fix my skin? Sending me photos of her arms, saying, will the parasite program fix my skin? And so I'm very honest as a practitioner. I said, no, actually, it won't. It will improve your skin, absolutely. But that is a mold rash. So you are still going to have symptoms until you deal with the mold, but you do also need to deal with the parasites because you've got these other symptoms going on. And at the time, Athena trusted me and she was doing the parasite program anyway, so she wasn't too worried. I was just setting her expectations. But she definitely didn't in those messages go, I've been exposed to mold, hands up. It then took time for her to think about when she would have been exposed to mold, how many times she'd been exposed to mold, how mold showed up in her life. And for some of us, it can be on the shower curtain, it can be on the washing machine. And when we're cleaning, we can be stirring up those spores. So we're inhaling them and creating more and more symptoms. It also meant because she had the mold rash, hence why I said I wasn't going to fix her of all those symptoms in 10 days on the parasite program. It meant that her liver was overburdened. So I knew I was also not going to fix Athena in a 10-day program. I was going to need 12 months to work with her because she was flaring on her skin. And if somebody's flaring on their skin, it means their liver is very overloaded. So that's going to take time. We have to support the liver to detoxify all the toxins sitting in the liver and in the body. Plus, look at all the reasons the liver has gotten so loaded up in the first place. So there's two parts to this. We had to support the liver, but then also look at all the reasons. Now, parasites was going to be one of the reasons. Mold was going to be another reason. Adrenal imbalances and low and hypoglycemia really impacts the liver. There's a lot of different reasons thyroid health that impact the liver. But Athena could then, when she had time to reflect, could think about how she had actually been exposed to mold throughout her life. And as we get rid of the mold, her skin will heal. So, common symptoms of mold exposure, it definitely doesn't look the same for everyone. Not everyone shows up with skin symptoms at all. I've had other clients with really bad eczema, psoriasis, brain fog, like real fatigue, mental health, mood, depression, anxiety. Not everyone has these really mood-related mold symptoms. Lack of sleep, like not being able to sleep, hormonal imbalances, cramping, bloating, period pain, thrush, like all sorts of things. Toe fungus, athlete's foot can also be mold as well. So there's not direct here's the list of symptoms that equals mold, because it can mold impacts lots of different systems in our bodies. Some symptoms are physical on our bodies, some are emotional, and some are cognitive to do with our brains. So here's what the cognitive and neurological symptoms look like for some people. Now, for me, it really impacts my brain. Like anytime that I've got forgetfulness or brain fog or memory lapses, I know that I've been exposed to mold. And to this day, it still freaks me out. I love my brain. I've always used my brain in accounting and in banking. And so anytime my brain gets impacted, it like does send me into a little wobble because I know that I'm being exposed to mold, and then I've got to try and work out where it's coming from because I probably can't see it as black mold or on my shower curtain, like I naively used to think. And I've never seen it on my clothes since, so I don't even get that clue. Poor memory or short-term recall issues, word finding. So when you feel like you've got gaps, like you're trying to speak and then you just forget a word, you don't know what word to insert, you have trouble thinking of a word or explaining yourself, anything around how you talk, how you think, and you're trying to say it verbally, and then there's just no word. You've forgotten it, you've forgotten your word, or you've forgotten what analogy or what you're trying to say. That's very mold related. Dizziness or balance issues. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that that is a mold one. Light or sound sensitivity, headaches or migraines. Migraines are very much connected to mold. I have not had a single migraine since I got healed my health with all the things that I've done. Mood swings, irritability, anger. Mold can really relate in anger, anxiety, panic feelings, or depression, and sleep disturbances and restless nights. Respiratory and sinus symptoms are very common of mold because mold spores are inhaled, they're in the air, they're in the environment, they often sit in our respiratory tract. So our lungs, our chest area, colds, immune system, lung conditions like me with my chronic lung condition in my banking days, that was all the mold just sitting there. Chronic sinus congestion or postnasal drip, often also seasonal allergies, sneezing, that's all related. Like if I sneeze a lot now, because I'm not really a sneezer, I know that there's something moldy happening in the environment. I'm in an environment or a space, whether it's a car or a hotel or whatever it may be, that's got mold there. Wheezing, shortness of breath, or asthma-like symptoms, mold related. Reoccurring colds, like you're forever getting sick. You feel like you just like never get over one, and then you've got the next one. Increased sensitivity to dust. So if you start sneezing or reacting to dust, very likely you've got a mold load. Also reacting to perfume or cleaning chemicals. Immune and inflammatory symptoms. Mold and mycotoxins overactivate the immune system, creating chronic inflammation. So fatigue or low energy, even no matter how much sleep and rest you get, muscle or joint pain, and there's no real reason for it. Like if you've had an accident or an injury, obviously there's a reason you've got joint pain, but this is just constant joint pain, swelling or puffiness, especially around the face and the eyes. Histamine reactions. So histamine reactions are really common. We've got a lot of histamine intolerances and diagnosis. We've got a lot of mast cell activation diagnoses being talked about these days. Root cause of that, one of the root causes, sorry, is mold. So quite often a client might be doing a house renovation, a house rebuild, their workplace, like a school might be going through a renovation or a rebuild. And now all of a sudden they've got mold symptoms or mast cell activation symptoms. The root cause, mold is a piece of that root cause. Feeling fluish but not actually sick, and reoccurring infections or slow healing. Digestive and detoxification symptoms. The gut and the liver often become burdened trying to process all the mold toxicity. So you'll get bloating and digestive discomfort, food intolerances that come out of nowhere, nausea or loss of appetite, lots of nausea, and also quite often as you're detoxing mold, there can be a lot of nauseousness. Constipation, or you are constipated and then extreme loose bowels, constipated loose. So you're going the pendulum swinging. Chemical sensitivity. So you're very sensitive to perfume in the lift all of a sudden. You're very sensitive to air freshener in the Uber. Or you're sensitive to the cleaning products. That's a real mold symptom. And then intolerance to supplements. Some clients can also struggle, like they feel nauseous or unwell from supplements, or their body reacts quite strongly. That's a real mold symptom. Skin breakouts, rashes, and eczema. That's what I call mold on the skin. And I've also shared on Instagram, and you can see posts of me sharing what mold on the skin looks like. Hormonal and metabolic symptoms. So the mold exposure disrupts our endocrine system. No wonder my hormones were so mucked up for many reasons, but this being one of them by the time I got so unwell. And our mitochondria, which is our energy powerhouses on a cellular level. Weight gain, oh my gosh. I personally gain a lot of weight when I'm exposed to mold. I'm like, what is going on? PMS, irregular cycles, or worsened menopause symptoms. Thyroid imbalances. My thyroid definitely plays up with mold. Blood sugar instability or sugar cravings. So parasites, it's not only parasites that create sugar cravings. A lot of people think it's just parasites, but mold definitely makes you want to eat a lot of sugar. Adrenal fatigue symptoms, so that we're wired but tired feeling, energy crashes, fatigue, not understanding why you're so tired. Emotional and behavioral changes. Now, this for me is a really sad one because I see this a lot with clients. Mycotoxins affect our limbic system and our neurotransmitters. So they can shift how we feel and respond emotionally. I call it the Darth Vader feeling. Now, that is a Shelleyism. That is something that I've 100% made up. You can't Google that to find any data on that. That is just what I call it. So when you feel flat, disconnected, numb, unexplained anger or irritability, emotional sensitivity or frequent crying, difficulty making decisions, loss of motivational drive. That's how mold shows up. It's really tragic. Environmental and sensory sensitivities. You can start to see how many areas of our life gets impacted by mold. Like there's just so many. It is really quite sad. One of the trademarks of mold toxicity is being reactive to things you never used to be reactive to. So you can be sensitive to light, sound, or temperature changes. So for example, if you're somebody that needs to wear sunglasses on a sunny day, that is not good optimal health. We might want to wear sunglasses because they're a pretty accessory. Don't get me wrong, I love a good pair of sunglasses to enhance my style and my outfit and what I want to wear for the day. But we all want to be able to drive our cars or walk out on the beach or in the sunshine, wherever we are, without squinting. Same with our little people. We don't want our little people to be squinting. We want to actually be able to look at the sunshine. When you're reacting to perfumes, cleaning products, car fumes, just any sort of reaction to our senses, that's when it's mold, feeling worse in certain buildings or rooms, or feeling better when you leave, that is all mold. So common hidden clues that some people don't know. White tongue can be parasites, but it can also be mold. A metallic taste in the mouth, often mold. Unusual body odor or musty smell in the sweat, mold. Static shocks, tingling sensations, or restless leg. Waking consistently between 2 and 4 a.m. Feeling better on holiday or away from the home, and then feeling worse when you get back home. Now, not all these symptoms mean mold toxicity. They can be other things as well, but mold can be the missing piece. And so if you think back on your life or currently where you are and you go, I've had mold exposure, but I haven't done anything extra to get it out of your body, you 100% know that mold is playing a role in whether it's your weight gain or your hormonal imbalances or your forgetfulness that you've just made normal. Okay, so if you're getting period cramps, like really bad ones, every single month, mold, and you've been exposed to mold is contributing to that symptom. So when most people hear the word mold, they immediately think danger, damage, or detox. But here's the truth. Mold itself isn't the enemy. In fact, mold plays an essential role in our natural world. So we see it in the forest, we see it in the bush. It helps decompose organic matter, recycle nutrients, and maintain ecological balance. Without it, forests wouldn't regenerate and food waste would pile up. So, like, we actually need it. The problem isn't mold existing, it's mold overgrowth in places that it shouldn't be, aka your bedroom, your bathroom, your body. So mold becomes a health issue when it overgrows indoors in your house. It starts producing mycotoxins, which are toxic chemicals some molds release as a defense mechanism, or your body becomes overloaded and your liver can't detoxify it effectively. Also, please note, because my mum's asked me this and plenty of clients have asked me this, not everyone will react to mold in the same way. So some of us, myself, my mum, Harvey, obviously, we react and lots of clients react to mold. Others will be exposed to mold, but it won't necessarily show up as definite symptoms or really large, obvious symptoms in their body. But what I can tell you is it catches up eventually because none of us want mold sitting in our bodies. We all need to detoxify it. Some of us just show symptoms and some of us don't, but nobody wants mold in their body. We want to be able to process it out and get it out of our bodies. Mold spores versus mycotoxins. So this is really important because mold is actually everywhere. There's 100,000 varieties of mold in the world. Mycotoxins are toxic chemicals produced by certain molds. They're 50 times smaller than mold spores. So they're like tiny, tiny, tiny. You wouldn't even see them in the air. That's why it's so tricky. They get into our bodies through our nose, lungs, sinuses, food, and our skin. Once they are in your body, unlike mold spores, they travel through your body and into different organs. So not only do they invade your bodies, they cling to a variety of environmental factors. So I just wanted to show you that so you really know the difference. So let's break it down. Mold spores mycotoxins. The seeds mold release to reproduce and spread. The chemical weapons mold produces to defend itself. Visible or airborne. So you can, when it's airborne, you can use an air filter. Invisible and chemical can't be filtered out. They can be cleaned or removed from the surfaces, can linger in your body long after exposure, usually cause irritation, sneezing, and asthma, can cause deeper immune, neurological, and hormonal disruption, measured by air quality or mold inspections, detected by urine mycotoxin testing or symptom patterns. So you can do a lab testing for this. You can always get your environment, which I had to do the second time I got exposed to it. You can get your environment tested and you can also get your body tested. So, and you can also do like a dust test for mold. It shows up differently for everyone because it affects multiple systems, our immune system, our endocrine system, our neurological system. So it doesn't show up the same way in everybody. Plus, some of us have got certain genes that make us more susceptible to mold. Not all of us. When I do people's gene profiles, not everyone has genes that are susceptible to mold. The other thing is we're also all built with different, not all built from, well, sometimes from birth as well, but we've all got different liver exposure, and how hard our liver is working or how hard our liver has worked in the past will also depend on how much mold impacts us. Because if we've got a very overwhelmed, overworked liver with a lot of toxins in our body, aka me, when I got first exposed to mold in Sydney, I also had parasites. I also had a viral load. I also had a thyroid imbalance. I also had period symptoms and food intolerances, like a lot of things. So I was going to be more exposed, even though I lived with two other people in the house that actually had no mold symptoms, even though they had mold in their rooms too and in their wardrobes. They didn't show any mold symptoms. They still actually needed to detoxify their bodies from mold, but they didn't have the same outward fatigue and headaches and sinus issues that I had in the brain fog. So there can be a genetic reason why as well, but also how healthy is our liver? And so this is why for every single client, I always want you to be as healthy as possible, because then we have room for mold exposure. Our body has capacity to be able to detoxify these things as we stay in a hotel room or as we get exposed to it in a rental house for 6 weeks or whatever it may be, an Airbnb, a long-term Airbnb. So one person might get rashes. Not every client gets mold rashes. Another might feel constantly wired but tired. Some clients gain weight, some clients lose weight, some clients feel anxious, and some develop a huge amount of food sensitivities. So this is why detoxing your body matters just as much as fixing the environment. And this is why doing regular liver work really matters, because in the world we live in today, we are going to be exposed to so many different things. We want to always be supporting each bucket and each drainage pathway, so we're getting rid of the load on our bodies. So then we only ever need to deal with one thing, ideally at a time, because we've always gotten rid of the backlog. How do we get exposed to mold? Major question. So it doesn't just live in our bathrooms or basements. Most people think, as I did, that you would see it or you'd smell it, but exposure is often hidden and ongoing. So inside the home, the most common ways is water damage from leaks, floods, roof issues, dishwashers leaking, washing machines. Like there's a lot of different ways that we get exposed to it. Under sinks, behind dishwashers, or around pipes, bathrooms with poor ventilation. But also a lot of clients get exposed to it with en suites with the showers, and they shower in the evening, and then there's no ventilation between the ensuite and the bedroom. So that is a really, really big deal in terms of mold exposure. Inside walls or ceilings after past water damage, carpets, rugs, or underlays that have absorbed moisture, or there's been flooding, or some sort, even just like dropping water bottles regularly, that will impact the mold exposure if it's not dried properly and dried down. Around windows with condensation, so if you've got a door with lots of condensation that then runs onto your carpet, after years of that, you're going to get mold exposure too. Air conditioning units and filters. So we don't always see mold. It often grows behind walls, under flooring, or in hidden spaces. Buildings and workplaces. So older buildings with poor ventilation, schools and commercial damages with water damage, offices with closed windows and recycled air, gyms, clinics, hospitals, shared indoor spaces, buildings with old plumbing systems, so you can be exposed to it daily without ever realizing. The food sources where we get mold exposure, the most common ones is grains, especially if they're poorly stored, coffee. So you might not even get exposed to mold in your house or in your environment, but if you're drinking moldy coffee, you may be drinking one a day or five a day for years on end. So, for example, I started drinking coffee in my university years. I was drinking five in my banking days. That's 15 years of drinking moldy coffee. Like, where is all that mold gone? Dried fruit, dates are really quite often Majoja dates. If you open them up, you'll see mold spores. Processed food, alcohol, especially wine and beer. So low level but consistent exposure builds up. So sometimes it's not anything big, but it's things over years that really build up. Outdoor and environmental exposure, humid climates, areas with high rainfall, gardens, compost or soil, decaying leaves or organic matter. Outdoor exposure is usually less of an issue unless the body is already overwhelmed. HVAC systems, air conditioning units, heating systems, poorly maintained filters, duct systems with moisture. So these can circulate the mold spores throughout a space. Water damaged items, furniture, mattresses, books, or paper. So, like secondhand bookstores, when they've got that moldy smell, secondhand clothes, moldy smell, clothing stored in damp environments, even after drying, they can still harbor mold. Vehicles. Now, when I got exposed to mold the second time, it was my apartment, but it was also my car. I'd left down the window, probably left it down multiple times during a really bad Wellington storm where we got really, really bad rainfall. And so the car had a whole heap of water in it, especially in the passenger seat and the ground, the floor mats. I didn't do anything about it. I could see that it was wet and eventually it dried out. And to be honest, I didn't think anything of it, but my car did start to take on a musty smell so bad that I'd like put air freshener in there to hide the smell or wind down the windows before anyone else was getting in the car. But every time the windows were up, the car had such a moldy smell. And like I kind of knew it, but didn't once again connect the dots that now there was mold in my car and I actually needed to do something to get it out. So I would just look at like the surface, I'd look at the smells, but I actually needed to get the mold out of my car. Air conditioning systems, water leaks inside the car, damp carpets or upholstery. Mold in washing machines, oh my gosh, drink bottles, toothbrushes, en-suites, shower curtains, showers, baths, like the list goes on in terms of just around our house. So one of the tools that I teach you and teach clients is to do pulse testing in different rooms in the house. And that can often be a really key piece of working out if there's mold in your environment and which rooms have the mold in it to help you start to problem solve where your exposure is coming from. Oh my gosh. So then I got exposed to mold a second time. Now, when I was buying this apartment, when I had my clinic in Wellington, I said to the real estate agent, is there mold? Is there mold anywhere in this apartment? My mum was looking at the apartment with me, and the real estate agent was like, no, there's no mold. We've never seen any mold. Nobody's ever talked about mold. There's no mold. And so I was like, rest assured, truly thought that there must be no mold. However, power of hindsight, there is a cliff and it's a concrete building. And there's a cliff that runs a bank that runs straight up to the concrete. And remember, concrete in Sydney and my apartment, this one has a cliff. The water runs straight down the cliff into that part of the apartment. So, knowing that and concrete holding on to water, I'm like, mold, mold, mold. Didn't know it at the time. I just looked for visual clues. Anyway, after living in the apartment for like less than 6 weeks, I had put on so much weight. I was tired, fatigued, craving peanut butter. Like I was going through, like when I looked in the recycle bin and saw the amount of glass jars I had of peanut butter, that was a clue because mold craves mold. So I was wanting more and more peanut butter because it's a moldy food, peanuts. And so I was feeding the mold internally. So I was eating so much peanut butter. And I had really bad brain fog. Like I was really struggling to remember what clients were telling me during the day, but it was the real fatigue and the weight that really gave it away. I also drove my car multiple times a day that had been exposed to mold as well. So I knew that I had mold the second time around, and then I was traveling. I went to a conference in the States, and I remember, I don't know if I'd noticed it before going to this conference, but I was showering myself and I looked at my body and I was like, oh my gosh, I've got a mold rash. Like, what is going on? So it took me a little bit of time to click that I had exposure to mold because I was like problem solving all the different things that it possibly could be for causing these symptoms, checking my hormones, checking my thyroid, thinking about my gut bacteria, looking at my diet, looking at like, was I working too much, looking at my nervous system, like looking at my blood tests, like looking like problem solving. And then when I was at this conference and I started to feel so much better and I saw the mold exposure, and then I got my apartment at the time, the spores, the air tested for the mold spores, and there was off the charts levels of mold in the apartment to the point that the inspector said I needed to move out straight away. And I actually demolished the apartment and rebuilt it from scratch. I got rid of all my stuff. Once again, common story. Then, as if twice wasn't enough, third time, once again, there was no visual clues and there was no smells. This time it showed up as an occasional headache, an occasional tension in my neck, really bad forgetfulness. Like I was walking, and this was recently, and I was walking with Harvey, and I actually had an appointment that I totally forgotten about. I totally missed the appointment. And I kept missing things, kept missing appointments, kept not knowing where I was going or what I was meant to be doing. Like it was the constant forgetfulness. It was also this time when I got my third exposure, I couldn't even. I remember lying in bed one morning and I was trying to lift up my phone to read a message. And so I was actively trying to like read what a client was telling me. And I just remember reaching for my phone and my bones and joints being so sore and my body being so fatigued, I couldn't even hold my phone up. And I had never experienced that before, but my body was just so weak. I had really bad puffiness, like really bad puffiness. My face was so puffy and just that real fatigue. Now, where I got exposed to mold this third time, I was actually sitting in it all day long in my office. It was under the carpet and the humidity, so the condensation from the glass doors was running into the carpet right where I was sitting, and then there was humidity in our bedroom. But the thing about when I really got those mold symptoms, Jeff was working away from home for weeks on end. And so I was in my office more than ever because I was getting up before Harvey woke up, working on a whole bunch of things for clients, and I'd stay up really late working on all these client things in my office. Like I was in my office way more than I've ever been before, and all my symptoms just came to a head, and it was horrific. And I just remember lying the other day that I couldn't get my phone, and I could barely lift myself out of bed, and Jeff was away for work. And I was thinking, how am I even going to lift Harvey out of his cot? Like, I found it so scary, so stressful. And as soon as I clicked the dots, like, I had the symptoms for about 6 weeks. But the thing that triggered it for me, not the forgetfulness, I kind of excused that away. It was not being able to lift my phone. And once I connected the dots on that, I could get on to the mold protocol and the herbs and start detoxifying my body, and my symptoms just shifted. Oh, thank goodness. So this led me to measure everything in the house. So once I had this whole experience with the phone and I was sure that I was mold, I started testing the humidity in every single room. And that's how I located that it was our bedroom that we were sleeping in at the time and my office. Because once again, I couldn't see anything. I couldn't smell anything. I didn't have any visual clues. So I had to get the data and use the humidity tester, which I absolutely love. And this is where I want to insert Ellen, a beloved client of mine. who's been a client for years and has had mold in the past, but wouldn't really have thought of it. Anyway, my AMD iron foot practitioners, Alana, Sherilyn, Jezebel, Jacinta, but the three, Jezebel, Sherilyn, and Alana at the time, they were talking about mold showing up in so many of their clients' foot detoxes. And I ran a retreat day, and this is really the power in doing things, being exposed, like exposing yourself to different health analysis all the time because different things happen and we change things and we change what we're doing. We change how we're supporting our bodies, like just all sorts of things all the time. And so Ellen came to a detox retreat day and mold showed up in her foot detox. And she was quite surprised at how it could show up in her foot detox because she runs a dehumidifier regularly. However, Wellington had been an extremely humid season situation, way more humid, a lot more rain than normal, and a lot of clients were like noticing that the humidity in their houses once they started doing the testing was a lot worse than normal. Anyway, as I'm talking, because the thing about the foot detox, it's a visual clue that clearly it's like, I don't really mind if you think you've been exposed or not exposed. Your body's telling us that you've been exposed. And as I was talking to Ellen throughout this detox retreat day, she clicked that for whatever reason, probably as we do, we move things, we change rooms, we put something in a cupboard, we do whatever. Like that's just what humans do. And then we forget, or we don't do something we've been doing for ages, or we don't even know if it's working. So sometimes we're not motivated to do it. Anyway, Ellen had stopped using her dehumidifier for maybe 2 months by this stage. But yet we'd had a very humid time in Wellington and a wet time, so no wonder mold was showing up. Humidity is one way that we get mold in our bodies. We start to get the spores in the environment and breathe them in. So the foot detox was the visual clue to recreate a habit that Ellen had previously been doing, but had stopped doing it and now it was showing up in her body. Like, and 2 months worth. And the funny part was she also had a little bit more joint pain, and joint pain can be mold toxicity. So there were a few other things that were showing up in her body overall that were alerting us to the fact that mold exposure was going to be a thing. But I just love this because I really encourage you to do things visually to check what's going on with your health. I have clients run blood work at least once a year for this very reason, because our bodies, our habits, where we're living, our exposure, diet, supplements, all these things can change. We can travel more, we can live, move countries, move cities, move houses, whatever it may be. So our health and our bodies are never stationary. Hence why I also get clients to do a 12-month program. So you can learn all of these tools and be educated. Like right now, even if you think you haven't had mold exposure, what's to say in 5 years' time that you do get mold exposure and now you've got all these tools? Or simple as like measuring a client, she's in the 12-month program, and because we do a weekly data check-in of different measurements, her pulse test was going up, her symptoms had changed, inflammation, puffiness, and her measurements had changed. And she would never have thought, but this isn't just one client, this has happened to multiple, that it would be the mold on her drink bottle that was causing it. And sure enough, it was. And this mold, she reckoned, had been on her drink bottle for like 3 months. So how do we get the mold out? One way is 100% the AMD Iron Foot Detox. I love the AMD Iron Foot Detox because it is such a gentle way to get the mold out of your body. Our feet are our largest detox organs. We don't have to take the mold through the stress of our liver, our gut, through our poo to get it out via our poo. Instead, it can bypass all of that internal stuff and not put any more stress on our internal body and go straight out through the warmth, the opening of our pores, straight dump it straight into the water in the foot detox. So the Ion Foot Cleanse is a very, very important tool for detoxing mold out of your body. And you can start detoxing mold out of your body without even taking any herbs. The foot detox, through the way it works with the polarity of the foot detox is designed to pull mold out of your body. So if you're regularly doing foot detoxes and you've got mold in your body, you are getting it out even without taking herbs. So it's a really great tool. Foods to avoid while being on a mold program: grains, dried fruit for the exact reason that I told you, and there can be mold. Coffee beans, age-cured and fermented foods, alcohol, nuts, peanuts, pistachios, cashews, and almonds are very mold-heavy foods. Corn and corn-based products, stored leftovers quite often, packaged baked goods, muffins, breads, crackers, especially from bulk bins, can often or long shelf lives. Those are the main foods that we do want to be not eating when we're trying to detox. Oh, the other one is, I knew there was one more that I just forgotten about, mushrooms. So you also don't want to be eating mushrooms. Mushrooms are very, and that would be even your dried mushroom drinks. Mushrooms are they're a fungi. They're a fungus food. So when you're detoxing mold, we don't want to be eating mushrooms. Tip to watch for invisible mold, even if your food looks fine. Say you've got a lemon and it's gone a bit white, so it's gone moldy, and you just chop it off, mycotoxins can still be present. So be very careful. Same with your moldy cheese, where you just, like, I grew up in a family where there was mold on the cheese and dad would just chop it off. And then we'd continue to eat the rest of the cheese. Now, those mycotoxins can still be present in the rest of the cheese. Red light is really, really important for detoxing soreness. So sweating it out of your body, really important. And then the red light for getting it out of your cellular health. Now, let's talk about 80. 80 was another long-term client of mine, and she was doing really, really well with her health until she went to stay with a family member in a very toxic, moldy environment. So she was in that mold exposure in the house with the mold exposure of a family member for a week or so, and then her symptoms really flared. She got really bad fatigue, doubt, low mood, a lot of reactions that started to show up in the foot detox, brain fog, like a lot of brain fog. And that's how we knew she'd been exposed to mold. While she was staying in this family member's house, she didn't necessarily recognize that she was exposed to mold, but her symptoms when she got back, and then we could link it back to the mold. Now, once again, because she knew and she'd worked with me and she knew how to manage all of these things, it didn't matter that she was exposed to the mold in the family member's house for a week, because she could link all her symptoms that came out of nowhere, but she knew to look for where they'd come from and could start detoxifying from the mold as fast as possible. So that's the really neat thing. When you've got these tools, we don't need to live in fear. We don't need to limit our lives. We don't need to live perfectly, because we've got tools. So obviously we've got my 10-day mold program where you can learn all of these tools, get the mold teas, learn all the herbs, all of the things to help your body detoxify mold. I encourage you to do it with help the very first time. You'll get all the herbal support. You'll learn everything that you need to know. You'll learn how to do it the best. Because a lot of symptoms show up when you're detoxing mold, and it's really important to get support. Because if you get low mood or brain fog, you're forgetting things, your energy gets really bad, you can't lift your own phone and you've got to actually live your life. This is why you need support. And this is why I don't just go take these herbs and off you go off the back of this, because those herbs, as you're detoxing, will present symptoms, and we need to support your liver. We need to support your nervous system. We need to support your adrenals, so you get the help that you need so you can continue to detoxify the mold out of your body. When your skin is showing more of a mold rash, or when you're sneezing nonstop and becoming more and more sensitive to foods, or you can't remember where you put your coconut milk because you put it in the freezer, or you put it in the car or the garage, or you've lost your keys, we need to help your brain. We need to rebuild your cognitive function. So we need to change your protocol to support you. So you never need to live in fear of doing a mold detox or getting the mold out of your body when you've got support. We hear horror stories when people are doing these things on their own without practitioner support. So this is where I am, to support you to get it out of your body. This is what I'm here for. And this is my zone of genius, to problem solve all your symptoms as they come up. And then you have the tools to know how to do it going forward. So I look forward to embarking on the mold adventure with you. I look forward to the fact that you've discovered all the ways that you can get mold. If you've got mold, if you know you've been exposed to mold, if you've got these symptoms, please, please make sure you reach out on the DMs, emails, contact me to make sure you get on the 10-day mold program so you detoxify it. And if you 100% know you've never been exposed to mold, note all of this down for future reference because it's very unlikely you won't be exposed in the future. And mold is horrific when it's in your body. I know. I've had three major times of it. It's much easier when I get exposed to it in a hotel room and I'm detoxing from it instantly than the long term. And long term exposure for me, right? None of this, each time that I was exposed to it, maximum, Sydney, 3 months was the longest time that I got exposed to it. Everything else has been short, yet my symptoms were horrific. Like to the point, like parasites, I can cope with. I get a little bit of bloating. My clothes don't fit quite so well. I get a little bit of puffiness. Parasites, I can kind of continue with. I don't necessarily like the bloating. I don't necessarily like the inflammation, but mold, it impacts my brain so badly. And clearly, not being able to lift my phone, not practical. The mold symptoms for me, horrific. Not the same mold symptoms that anyone else gets. Okay, so I really encourage you to think about exposure and then getting it out of your body. The key thing here is if you've been exposed, we must do something to help your body detoxify it out. But I look forward to how good you will feel at the end because it's amazing.